What is going on in New Jersey?
This is a truly bizarre story. It's a series of events. Bottom line is that the FBI is utterly clueless.
Somewhere over New Jersey, a cluster of lights hangs in the night sky, refusing to blink like a plane or drift like a balloon, and the footage of it has done something almost nothing online can do anymore. It has split the country in two. The same clip, studied frame by millions, convinces one half they are watching proof of something not from this world, and the other half that there is nothing unusual about it at all.
It was ridiculous. There were no answers. Every question that was asked by a member of the state legislature, great questions, no answers.
Both sides are certain. Both sides are staring at the identical video. And the reason nobody can agree on what it shows is stranger than either answer. The footage. Everyone is staring at. Now, multiply that one backyard by a whole state. Because that is exactly what makes this thing so impossible to shake off. It was never a single video, never one lucky clip you could wave away as a fluke or a fake. Starting in the late fall of 2024, it was thousands of them. Residents across the northern part of the state began reporting large objects moving over their neighborhoods at night, coming back on multiple evenings, sometimes appearing to move together in loose formation. The same scene playing out on porch after porch, driveway after driveway. Strangers who had never met, all standing out in the cold, with their arms up and their phones out, filming the very same impossible thing at the same hour. And it did not stay put. The report spread into New York, into Pennsylvania, into Maryland and Connecticut and Massachusetts, until it felt like the entire Northeast had its neck craned upward at the same time. Every new clip made the argument louder instead of quieter. Here is what makes this different from every blurry UFO tape you have ever seen. The footage was good. People were not squinting at a single gray smudge from decades ago. They were filming in high definition, sometimes with real zoom, and the objects were big and bright and close enough to feel present. When something is that clear and still nobody can tell you what it is, that is exactly when the internet loses its mind. By the middle of December, one federal agency alone had taken in more than 3,000 tips. 3,000. That is not a handful of cranks in tinfoil hats. That is a state full of ordinary people who looked up, saw something they could not explain, and decided it was worth calling the government about. And the government's answer, or the strange absence of one, is a huge part of why this thing spun the way it did. But before we get to what the officials said, you need to see where these things kept showing up. Because it was not random, where they kept showing up. Follow the map, and the map is unsettling. A lot of the most talked about sightings clustered near places that matter. The objects were reported over Picatinny Arsenal, a military research site tucked in the New Jersey hills. They were reported near Naval Weapons Station Earl, a base that handles munitions on the Jersey Shore. They turned up in the restricted airspace around a golf club in Bedminster, owned by the incoming president. And there were reports near a nuclear plant down in the southern part of the state. You can see why people got nervous. If you sat down and tried to pick the exact locations guaranteed to make a whole nation paranoid, you would pick those. Then came the incident that turned worry into something sharper. In late November, a medical helicopter trying to bring in a crash victim was reportedly kept from landing because of drone activity in the area. A medevac, someone needing an emergency airlift, and something in the sky supposedly got in the way. That single story ran everywhere, and it moved the whole conversation from oddity to threat almost overnight. Local officials started demanding answers. One New Jersey state representative went as far as calling for military intervention. And a sitting United States senator, one who actually went out and reviewed footage himself, said out loud that the communication from the FBI and Homeland Security simply was not there, that the people of New Jersey deserved to understand what was happening and were not getting it. That vacuum, that silence where an explanation should have been, is exactly where the theories rushed in. And they got wild fast. The theories, the internet won't let go of. Once the official channels went quiet, the internet did what the internet always does. It filled the silence with everything. If you like your mysteries with the actual receipts attached, instead of just vibes, take 1 second right now and subscribe, because this channel chases the whole story, not just the scary half. Okay, back to the theories, because they only get stranger from here. The most popular one, by a mile, was the one you are already thinking: aliens. Or, if not aliens exactly, then something interdimensional, craft slipping in and out of our reality, which conveniently explained why they seemed to vanish the second anybody got a clean lock on them. To the people in this camp, the silence coming out of Washington was not incompetence. It was a cover-up. Proof that somebody at the top knew precisely what was flying over New Jersey and had decided the rest of us could not handle it. Then there was the military camp. These folks looked at the same footage and saw the opposite of aliens. They saw us. Secret next-generation drones. Surveillance tech being quietly tested over civilian neighborhoods. Because we're better to see how it performs in the real world than over real people who have no idea they are the experiment. They pointed at how the objects clustered around bases and sensitive sites and said, of course they did. That is the entire point of a test. And then you had the orbs. This is where it gets genuinely strange. A slice of the footage did not show drone shapes at all. It showed glowing spheres. And online, people started stitching those clips into a much bigger claim. That larger red orbs were racing out over the Atlantic and back at impossible speed. And that the smaller white ones were somehow docking with them out there, refueling, recharging. There is even a widely shared clip that people swear shows one of these things powering itself back up in mid-air. No agency ever confirmed a word of that. But once a video like that is loose, no correction ever travels as fast as the original. People slowed the clips down, zoomed until the pixels smeared, and read whole flight patterns into a few blurry frames. And the more you stare at a light with no reference points around it, no horizon, no scale, no idea how far away it sits, the easier it becomes to convince yourself it is doing something no aircraft could. Feeding all of it was one detail that sounded almost too perfect. Around the same time, there were local rumors about radioactive material that had reportedly gone missing, and the internet connected the dots instantly. The drones were scanning for it, sniffing out radiation. That is why they hovered near the plant and the bases. It is a fantastic theory. It is the kind of thing that keeps you awake at 2 in the morning. It also, as it turned out later, had no actual connection to the drones at all, but we will get to how these stories quietly fell apart. Because the last piece of the online case was the one that made the whole thing feel too big to wave off. This was not only happening here. Similar footage started surfacing from other countries, from Brazil, from Mexico, from elsewhere, showing lights doing similar things. And if it was global, people reasoned, then it could not just be some guy in Bergen County with an expensive quadcopter. It had to be coordinated. It had to mean something. That is the version of the story that went viral. That is the version most people still carry around in their heads today. And it is genuinely compelling. There is just one problem. While all of that was spreading, a very different explanation was already being written down inside a government briefing, and almost nobody saw it in time. What the officials actually said. Here is where the government made everything worse, mostly by contradicting itself in public. In the same stretch of days in December, you could watch officials say two things that could not both be true. The president told reporters there was nothing nefarious in the sky. Members of Congress walked out of a classified briefing and told the cameras the sightings posed no threat to the public. A national security spokesman went on morning television and said flatly there was no sign of a public safety threat. And then, almost in the same breath, the government acted terrified. The FAA dropped temporary flight restrictions over parts of New Jersey. Not gentle ones either. Restrictions reportedly backed by the authority to use deadly force against aircraft that violated them. Detection systems got shipped in. Bases went on alert. If there was truly nothing to worry about, nobody explained why the response looked exactly like the response to a genuine threat. A joint statement finally landed from 4 agencies at once: Homeland Security, the FBI, the FAA, and the Defense Department, and read plainly, it was the most deflating sentence in the entire saga. Their assessment was that the sightings were a combination of lawful commercial drones, hobbyist drones, law enforcement drones, manned airplanes, helicopters, and, this is the part that stung, stars that people had mistaken for drones. Stars. After weeks of national panic, the official answer included the word stars. You can imagine how that landed. To a public that had been kept in the dark for a solid month, being told they had been filming airplanes and constellations did not feel like relief. It felt like an insult. And it made a lot of people trust the calm reassurances even less, because if the answer really was that boring, why did it take so long, and why the deadly forced no-fly zones over something as harmless as a hobby drone? The frustrating truth is that the government had better answers than it was giving. It just was not sharing them yet. And when those answers finally leaked out, they did not support the aliens. But they did not exactly flatter Washington either. Then the receipts showed up. This is the part the viral clips never mention. The day before those aggressive flight restrictions went up, one federal agency had already assembled an internal briefing that quietly took apart some of the most famous incidents. It was not released to the public at the time. It only surfaced much later, pried loose through a records request filed by a magazine. But when you read it, a lot of the magic drains right out of the footage. Take that heart-stopping medevac story, the drones blocking a medical helicopter. According to the internal review, at the exact moment of that diversion, there were 3 airplanes lined up to land at a nearby airport, nose to tail on final approach. From the ground, they gave the appearance of objects hovering in formation, when in reality, they were flying straight toward the people watching them. Not a swarm, a landing pattern. Take the sightings out over the ocean, the ones that seemed to hover and then move. Planes making their final turn toward the runways at a major New York airport were flying a long, sweeping S-shaped path over the water. For stretches of that turn, from a fixed point on shore, an approaching aircraft barely appears to move at all. It looks parked in the sky. Then, it slides away. Exactly the behavior people were calling physically impossible. Take the drone that appeared to be spraying mist or chemicals into the air. The likely culprit was condensation streaming off the wingtips of a small plane, an ordinary bit of aerodynamics that looks deeply sinister the moment you have already decided you are watching something sinister. And that radioactive material rumor, the one that felt like the master key to everything, followed all the way to the end. There was no drone connection at all. It was 2 frightening stories that happened to be in the news the same week, welded together by people desperate for the pieces to fit. Then there was the celebrity moment of the whole panic. A former governor posted video of what he described as dozens of large drones hovering over his home near the Capitol. It spread fast. And then people who actually study the night sky pointed out what he had really filmed. It was Orion, the constellation, one of the most recognizable patterns of stars in the entire winter sky, caught on a shaky phone and mistaken for a fleet of aircraft. And here is the cost of all that confusion, the part almost nobody talks about. During the height of the scare, the number of people aiming lasers at aircraft over New Jersey spiked hard. In a single month, there were more of those dangerous incidents than the state had logged in an entire previous year. Picture it from the cockpit for a second. Green beams jerking up out of the dark, sweeping across the windshield, chasing wingtip lights. Blinding pilots who were only trying to line up and land, a cockpit flooding green and useless in the seconds that matter most. Frightened people, convinced the lights above them were hostile, had started aiming lasers at anything that flew, which means the panic itself became a genuine threat in the sky, long before any drone ever proved it was one. So, no, not everything got a clean answer. But the scariest, most shared pieces of evidence kept turning out to be planes on approach, condensation off a wing, and stars. Which brings us to the real question. If the explanation was mostly that ordinary, then why, more than a year later, can the internet still not put this thing to bed? So why can't anyone agree? Because the boring explanation has holes in it too, and honest people know it. Start with the witnesses who do not fold easily. Not every report came from a nervous homeowner filming a star. Some of the people raising the alarm were pilots, radar operators, law enforcement, the exact folks whose entire job is knowing what belongs in the sky and what does not. Even specialists who firmly believe the vast majority of sightings were misidentifications will tell you that a small number of cases were never cleanly explained, not proven to be alien, just genuinely unresolved. And in a flood of 3,000 tips, a few real unknowns can hide in plain sight forever. Then there is the damage the government did to itself. Even after officials had internally decided there was no threat, they kept pushing for new powers to knock drones out of the sky. They imposed the deadly force restrictions anyway. They promised a full public report more than once, and that full report just never really arrived. When the people in charge act more worried than their own words, you cannot be shocked when the public decides to trust the actions over the words. That is the trap this entire story is stuck in. The skeptics can point at the leaked briefing and say, look, planes and stars, case closed. The believers can point at the secrecy and the deadly force zones and the report that never came and say if it was just planes, then why did you behave like that? Both sides are holding a real piece of the truth. Neither piece completes the picture. So the footage keeps circulating, and every single time it does, the same argument starts over from the top. That is why new clips still surface. That is why the comment sections still catch fire the second one gets posted. It was never really a fight about pixels. It was a fight about whether you trust the people who told you not to worry. The lights above Jersey. So, what do you actually do with a mystery like this one? You hold two things at the same time. You accept that most of what terrified New Jersey that winter was almost certainly ordinary. Aircraft on approach, hobby drones, a bright constellation, and a panic that fed itself once enough people were looking up, expecting to find something. And you stay honest enough to admit that ordinary does not mean all of it, and that a government contradicting itself in public earned every ounce of the suspicion that came its way. The lights over Jersey did not come from another world, but they exposed something very real about this one. How fast we will rush to fill a silence, how little it takes for a plane to become a portal, and how badly people want a straight answer from the exact people who are supposed to have one and would not give it. Whatever comes next, keep your camera steady and your skepticism even sharper. The next clip is always one clear night away. Now, I want to hear from you. When you watch that New Jersey footage, which side are you actually on? Is it planes and stars? Is it our own secret tech being tested over our heads? Or do you think there is still one real unknown up there that nobody has ever explained? Tell me in the comments, and if you made it all the way to the end, subscribe, because we are just getting started chasing the stories the official version leaves out.